Hello and welcome to another Rudridge tutorial video. Today we're in the heart of London's West End and I've been joined as usual by Paul Duke, the General Manager of Rudridge. Paul, what are we looking at today?
Today, Tony, we're going to be looking at the installation of Marshall's Scoutmoor Yorkstone paving and how it's laid on the streets of London. But before we do that, we're going to hand you to Dave at the quarry in Halifax, and he's going to talk through the process of how they get the slabs and how they produce them.
I'm Dave Stanger, Marshall's National Commercial Manager for Natural Stone. With me today is Dave Smith, our Operations Manager, and welcome to Scoutmoor Quarry near Ramsbottom in Lancashire. So Dave, you've been here 30 years, you've seen the quarry and develop the way it is now. What was one of the first jobs that you did when you were here?
Back in '87 we did the Trafalgar Square. Those were sort of 1,500 square pieces, 4-inch thick, and we supplied about 100 pieces, I think.
Right. Since then, you know, we've gone on to supply over 150,000 square metres of sandstone every year, and Scoutmoor consistently, we believe, through the independent testing that we've had done, is one of the best sandstones in the UK, one of the best UK indigenous sandstones. Technically, its properties are fantastic in the public realm. Time and time again, Scoutmoor comes to the fore as the leading stone, both for colour and also for its performance.
This year as well alone, we'll do 60,000 tonnes from the quarry, which again is, you know, surpassing all years previously.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the order book going forward shows that that's going to keep getting stronger. If we just tell us a little bit about what we can see in the background, the different layers of the quarry.
The first sand rock you can see is a very soft material, only good for aggregates. Then you've got the what we call the top rock, which is a very coarse grit stone. Then your band of shale, and then we've got the Aslingden sandstone, which is ideal for the paving. And then currently behind us we've got 3 excavators extracting the block for the guys to use black powder to split them into size, and then we transport them to the 2 sawing facilities at Halifax and Appleton.
Chris will put a charge into it to open up the block, and that's the first time we get to see what it's got to offer and how we make the very best of it. Okay, let me show you some 300 million year old rock. That was a good split. So Dave, we've just split the block there, so this is the first time that human eyes have seen this for how many years now?
Approximately 300 million years. 300
million years, wow. Now the stone itself, interestingly, people don't realise this, do they, but Scoutmoor's a blue stone, and the brown, the buff brown around it is actually the mineral egress into that as the stone's forming. That's right, isn't it?
The oxidisation as well, yes.
The oxidisation, okay. The thing that this actually gives you first sight of is actually how good the block is that right? What are you looking for when you open the block?
No fractures, no impurities, you know, mud balls or anything like that. Good solid sandstone, no loose beds. You know, the bottom half of that block is fantastic.
And you think that'd be perfectly fine to send for dimensional stone for us to cut?
Yeah, certainly.
So what you can see here on the surface of the stone now, we've split it, it's like the tide's gone out on the sand. The way we use sandstone is actually cut it onto its bed, and we use it the way that it's laid down, and this is a fantastic example of actually showing people what a great sandstone starts life at before we cut it into its finished product. Okay, so you've seen the extraction process now. I'd like to introduce you to Mark Sutherland, who's our business unit manager. Mark, would you be able to talk to us a little bit about what we're going to see now in the shed with the raw block coming in and the process to actually coming out the other end?
Yeah, so basically the block comes from the quarry, and as you can see from the pile here, the block's in a lot of different shapes and sizes. Not all of them are perfectly square. The first process that we have in the factory is called topping and tailing, and what that's to do, that's to put 2 square edges on the block so you can stand them up onto the main saw. So the topping and tailing process, that's done on the wire saw. And that's as it sounds. You've got two big wires like a cheese cutter come down on either side of the block to create the flat edges. After the topping and tailing process, the block's now ready to go onto the circular saw. So the block's stood up, so you've got your flat edge on the bottom and your flat edge on your top. And then the first process on the saw is vertical cutting. So your vertical blades come down, your blades drop 600mm down, and then once that process is complete, your blades come out, and then on the bridge of the saw, a horizontal blade comes down, and what that does is it parts off your slabs, ready to go onto the conveyor for the secondary cutting. Once the products come off the main saw, the slabs come down the conveyor, and then it's down to the experience and skills of the operator to inspect the stone to look for any imperfections or any cracks. So that the stone comes along the conveyor, the operator has a look, presses a button, the blade comes across, it creates the first part of the stone, and then the operator will set how long that stone's going to be. So if it's going to be random length, basically we can work around the defects in the stone to maximise the yield. If it's going to be a set size, for example 900 long, the operator will jog the conveyor along and at 900 will make the next cut. An alternative way of cutting, instead of a circular saw, is to cut on a frame saw. The frame saws are a big gang of blades which are diamond tipped, and you can get even bigger blocks onto these saws, which is why we use these as well as the circular saws. The frame saws cut down the stone, and it's a bit like slicing a loaf of bread, and what that does is it creates slabs. Once the slabs have been cut on the frame saws, they move on to the next process, which is cross-cut tables. As you'll be able to see, each slab of stone gets loaded onto the table, and at that point the operator inspects the stone for any defects. Then the operator sets the cutting pattern based on maximising the yield of the stone that's on the table. So when we put the slabs on the table on the crosscuts, when the operator inspects it, they're looking to get the maximum yield out of the stone. So what we'll do is we'll look to see where we can get the large sizes of paving out, but also any of the edges where we can't get a full flag out of, the operator will cut that into smaller element sets for customer orders. In addition to the diamond sawn offer that we have, we do a number of secondary processes. These can be shot blast and sand blasting, but what we're going to have a look at now, this is the flaming process. The diamond sawn stone is put onto a conveyor and it passes through a flaming machine, and inside that machine you've got a lance that goes backwards and forwards and applies heat to the stone. What this actually does is it blisters the surface to give it a rustic appearance. We also do masonry products, and these masonry products can range from tactile paving such as blister paving and hazard paving that you'll see on crossings and at the bottoms of stairways. But we also have a couple of 5-axis CNC machines. These are capable of doing one-offs, doing large steps, benches, spherical shapes. Basically what we've got here is we've replicated a slab of stone that comes off the frame saws inside of the factory, and the product that's on top here shows how much stone we would get out of that. The most efficient way of manufacturing natural stone is to produce in random lengths, because you can use the whole length of the slab. Once you start using two-way dimensional sizes, that's when you start to restrict yourself a little bit. If you have a look here on this slab, what you've got is this shows you what we'll get out of a typical piece of stone. So we've got 3 flags here. That would be a primary product, but we've also got to make sure we make absolute most of everything else. So what we've done here is we've got some strip here that we could put on stock and we could use for sets. We've got some sets here that customer's ordered, and as you can see, all around the other bits here, we've got bits of strip here. Ideally, what we'd like to do is to use all of the stone for paving if it was the right size, but because we have to cut around natural cracks and variation within the stone, this is what we end up with.
Mark, of the stone that comes into the shed, typically what yield would you take to a tonnage?
Based on a standard thickness of, say, 63mm, you'd expect about 2 square metres per tonne.
Okay, brilliant. And there's clearly edges and there's parts of the block that we can't use for anything. What would we do with that? Would we just bin it, or would we use it elsewhere?
So the bits that we can't actually cut any strips or any sets out of, such as the very rough edges around here, you'll see one of the reasons why we couldn't use this bit for a set is because we've got a crack running around here. This will actually go to the crushing operation within Marshalls, and that's crushed and that goes into pressed concrete products. So we try and utilise as much as we can for stone products. Any other bits of stone get crushed and go into concrete.
Brilliant, that's smashing, thanks Mark. It's really important when dealing with natural stone that we try and use the most that we can, and Mark's mentioned earlier that random length's the best format. Working with our trading partners, Rudridge, they've really understood this and taken this out to the market, and we try and get the best that we can possibly use of all the stone that comes out. This is a finite resource. It's taken 300 million years to be engineered, and we only get one chance at selling it. So it's really important that when we're designing schemes as well as selling schemes, that we encourage them to take that into consideration.
So as you can see, we've got a lot of product here that's come through the factory, and this is all ready to go in the yard for dispatch to customers.
Okay.
And what you've got here is you've got some of the products are sets, which is your smaller sizes, but we've got a lot of paving. Some of that, as I mentioned before, comes in two-way dimensional and also random length. You can see from the different lengths here. And then we package everything on a pallet. It comes shrunk wrap, and we've got identification labels on. What that tells you what the product code is, how much square meterage is on the pallet. Also tells you the date that it was manufactured as well, so we can trace it back.
Could you just tell us a little bit about the CE marking, because that was mandatory from July 13?
Yes, all the products that we do come CE marked. The label goes onto the product, and what that does is it gives you a reference to what quarry the products actually come from and all the specific characteristics of the stone as well.
Brilliant. And this goes on to all our packs?
Yep, this goes on all our packs so you can identify it as CE marked. There's two labels that's on there, as well as the CE marking label. What you've got is a product description with a product code explaining what stone type it is, and also it says when the product was made and what time, so we have traceability in the factory. And also it has on how many square metres is on a pallet. Fantastic. Because with random length that can change from pack to pack.
Fantastic. Marshall's got the ability to send out full 26-tonne wagons direct to site. We've got different logistics. We can send it on a flatbed for site unload. We can send it on a crane, which helps the customers in tight spots. But actually one of the real advantages of working with Rudridge is that they're in a unique position to have this material in stock. They can send this out in small loads or mixed loads, which often into sites in the south is a massive advantage given the site restrictions of storage. So you've seen our offer, you've seen it from coming out the ground, you've seen it go through the process, you've seen the finished product. I'd like to hand over now to Tony and Paul in London to show you the installation.
Thanks, Dave. We're now back in London. Paul, what are we going to be looking at first?
Today we're going to be looking at the Yorkstone Scoutmoor paving. We're on a prepared site. They've set the levels and they've laid a 50mm dry screed of a sand and cement mortar. We have a 63mm thick Yorkstone paving in random lengths. They've wet the slabs so they can see the grain, and they've selected the best quality slabs. The guys are now going to come in and install the slabs. They're using a vacuum press to help lift them and position the slabs. The guys are now positioning the slab using the vacuum press. Then they're going to be tamping it down using a wooden mallet. This is to get full bed adhesion. Then they're going to open the joint to a 6 to 10mm. This can be then pointed at a later date. This 6 to 10mm joint allows for the tolerance in manufacturing. The joint will then be filled by a modified epoxy mortar. This is a wet slurry. This will enable the entire joint to be filled to the correct level. This creates a very good mechanical bond. Because we're using a dry screed in this instance, the paving can be laid very quickly and in random lengths. When they come to street furniture or any obstacle, they will just cut using a diamond blade.
We're now walking on one of the finished areas, and one of the things I've noticed, Paul, is the different colours of the slabs. Some are blue, some are brown, some are mixed. You know, why is that?
Scoutmoor is predominantly a blue slab. Now what you see here is you've got some veining, and this is caused by minerals and iron during its lifetime when it's actually in a rock form. Also, there's some black staining in there. This is coal. This will stay in there for the lifetime of the paving slab.
Well, this is one of the busiest walkways in London. Lots of people are going to come down here. Why have we chosen this particular stone, Paul?
This is because of aesthetics, and it's also because of its technical properties and its durability, particularly non-slip, with the added benefit that it retains the non-slip properties throughout its lifetime as it wears.
We've just walked round the corner to Trafalgar Square, and I can't believe the size of these slabs, Paul. They're incredible, aren't they?
This shows the durability and the flexibility of this particular paving product. These slabs have been down between 10 and 15 years. Some of the paving further down on Trafalgar Square has been down for at least 30 years. Once more, you can see the flexibility of this product. These particular slabs are not rectangular. They've been cut to size for this particular scheme around Trafalgar Square, going around one of the fountains.
My thanks to Paul and everyone at Marshalls. For more information on Marshalls paving products and any other groundwork and civil engineering materials, please visit the Rudridge website on www.rudridge.co.uk.